Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming along to a new episode of The Behavioural Investor. Today we have a great privilege of having Paul Lloyd, the co-founder and CMO of Snoop app. Snoop is an app that allows you to track your spending and also provides tips on how you can save money as well. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
How did you come up with the idea for Snoop, and also how did you come up with the name?
My background is I spent 20 years really working at Virgin, and so I was a scientist by background. I did a chemistry degree, then worked in kind of a consulting business. I didn't want to be a chemist, and for reasons I can't really remember, and then was really fed up of working in businesses but never owning the outcome, and so looked to join a business, a small business. And Virgin was just getting started in financial services and money and banking, and I got the opportunity to go and work there by complete chance, and found it just the most liberating experience. And what Virgin was trying to do from the outset was really change people's relationship with money, change their behaviour with money. It started as a business that tried to help people invest, and then got into banking and all sorts, and kind of worked with that business for 20 years, really, as for a lot of that time as the CMO. And we grew that business from being a tiny business to being 3,000 people. It was listed on the stock, and we floated the business and eventually sold it. And it was an amazing experience, but I think we had such ambitions from the outset that when we got to the end of the Virgin journey, it was kind of like we did really well. We were really proud of what we built, but we never really achieved all the things we wanted to achieve. And a group of us, there were 10 of us, including Jen Angardia, who was the CEO at Virgin Money, who we loved building businesses together. And we kind of said, we think we've built a number over the years. We've got at least one more in us. And what happened was that open banking had come along. And we sat together and talked about what we wanted to do. We said, wouldn't it be amazing if we could truly set out the things and achieve with open banking, this new technology that allows, forces banks to open up their systems via APIs, that allows a new kind of business to emerge that sits between banks and consumers. Just like Airbnb sits between places to stay and consumers, and Uber sits between transportation and consumers. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could create a business that sat between banks and consumers, that did what banks should always really have done, but have never done, which is to really help people with money and to use that information to the customer's benefit, not the bank's benefit. And that was really what the vision and where it came from. And we're just at the beginning of that journey. But that's where the business idea came from. It was about really driven by a desire to really, really change people's relationship, to create a business that sat between banks and consumers that did a better job for them. And the name came about. Naming's really hard. Having done it a number of times. It was really fortunate. I worked with the Virgin brand for 20 years, and it's an amazing, amazing brand. Never took it for granted. It's almost one of its kind, really. Think about the breadth of sectors it operates in. And naming's really hard. Named some things over the years. It's really hard emotionally, and it's really hard practically, because we need to trademark, and we need Facebook IDs, and we need a URL, and so it's both emotionally hard and practically really hard. And we were playing around with different ideas, and the name Snoop came up. And Snoop's a real double-edged sword. Some people love it, some people hate it, just like Virgin. And but the reason we went for Snoop in the end is ultimately it's what the product does, right? It snoops around snoops on your behalf, trying to find ways for you to save money. And the thing we noticed was every time we went to see people back in the early days to talk about the business of what we're trying to do, and we talked to them about Snoop, and whenever we went back to see them, they always said, "Where's Snoop?" It was like, "Oh, actually, you remember what we were talking about." And it was the same with consumers. We did some consumer research, and we talked to a whole bunch of target consumers over kind of 2 weeks. And this was back in the days when Snoop was really just a PowerPoint presentation. We didn't have any tech. I remember doing the research with little bits of paper, kind of hand-drawn screens and hand-drawn ideas. And after about 10 days, we rang all consumers, and we actually researched the name as part of it. We rang them all and said, "What was the name of that business that we talked to you about?" And all of them remembered it. And we were just like, actually, do you know what? That is so hard to achieve. And so that's how we came up with the name.
I just want to go back to that concept of open banking, and I really like the way that you explained that. Was the thing that allowed that to happen a regulatory change, or was it more the technical sides of IT enabled it?
It was absolutely a regulatory intervention. So basically, the Competition and Markets Authority in the UK did a market study on banking, and basically what they found was that, yeah, banking is, not as competitive as it could be. It does not drive all the right outcomes for consumers, and part of the issue is, banking is a tough business. It's highly regulated, highly capitalized, and so creating banks is really hard. And so what you end up with is, a lack of competition, which the CMA were finding were driving poor outcomes for consumers. So the CMA's intervention effectively was to force the big 9 banks in the UK, the CMA 9, to create open banking. So what it did was, and their thesis was that by creating open banking, what you would allow is a whole raft of businesses to evolve and emerge that could do what banks do without having to be banks. And so that's what's happening. There is a whole swathe of fintech businesses based on open banking, all doing different things, focusing in different areas of the market, whether that's, some of them are focusing on investing, some of them, like Snoop, are focused on money management and money saving, some of them are focused on very specific elements of mortgage underwriting, which are all about, but they're all, the common ambition is to try and, do things better, make it easier for consumers. But yeah, it's the regulatory intervention that's allowed it to happen. Okay. And it's fascinating, because now what we're seeing, of course, is that's not just happening in the UK, but it's happening around the world, and not everywhere. But I think there's this sort of trend towards open data, open finance. You'll eventually see that happen, and it will force the banks to be more competitive, and hopefully it will deliver better outcomes for customers too.
Absolutely. It's a little bit of a blunt one, so feel free to dance around the topic, but it's okay. How did you talked about starting up the new business with 10 other work colleagues, and one of the questions that we're interested in was how you got the capital, or how that started off.
Yeah, no, I think very simply, we were kind of fortunate, because for startup teams, we're quite a lot older. We worked at Virgin for 20 years together. So actually that meant that we probably had, we'd saved a bit of money over the years. I mean, none of us are that well off, but enough to kind of get us going. Our exec chair, Jane Ann, invested in us to give us the seed capital to get us started. And we were really fortunate because of our history and our when you've done that thing for 20 years, you meet people along the way and you talk to them about what you want to do. And so we're very fortunate that Havisham Investments, who were a connection that Jane Ann had, kind of really believed in the vision about what we were doing, and got behind us and invested and gave us enough capability to get the first release of the app out. And then, of course, when you do that, and when it's real and people can see it, and they can see customers engaging with it, and they can try it themselves, as opposed to it just being a thing on a piece of paper, which is, it's hard to invest in that. That gave us the ability. So we're really fortunate. I think a combination of, investment from ourselves, and then, but I think, startup capital is really hard. It's really hard, even for, an experienced team. And I think, but ultimately, we were fortunate enough to be able to do
that. So continuing on about the challenges, maybe there are some people who have some similar ambitions as you've executed on, actually, in the fintech space. So I'm wondering if we could, address maybe their concerns directly. Do you have any advice or thoughts about how hard it's been to get to where Snoop is at the moment? If you had some words of wisdom for an ambitious youngster, what might those be?
Yeah, I think it's really hard starting a business and running a business. It's completely different than working in an established business. I mean, it's not too dissimilar to where Virgin was 20 years ago. It kind of, but you grow to a point where actually things change, businesses get bigger, they behave differently, there are different processes and structures you need to run a big business that you don't need in a much smaller one. And I think it's been really challenging, but it's been massively rewarding. And I think that, I don't know that I have words of wisdom. The only thing I would say is, I mean, it's taught me so much along the way, both sort of technically and professionally, but also personally. You know, you kind of think, you sort of think you've been around the block a bit, but then I've always found that I've learned along the way, and it's taught me so much about myself. And I think the thing I would say actually is, in some ways, I probably wish I had done it when I was 20 years younger, and then would have kept doing it, because it is massively rewarding. And I would just say the biggest thing is you have to believe in yourself and your idea. There will be so many people along the way that won't believe in you, not sort of not aggressively or maliciously, but just kind of won't engage in it, and they'll kind of give you advice that isn't helpful, that you don't agree with. But you just have to believe in yourself and believe in what you're doing. No one will understand your business as well as you do. No one will understand your idea as well as you do. No one will be as passionate about it as you are. And you just have to believe in yourself and keep going and not give up. And I think if you can do that, and it is really hard, it's hard all the time, but I think if you can do that, it's massively rewarding. And I think that we're not all the way through that journey. We are, but if I think back to Virgin, there were times when it was really, really tough. But you keep going. If you're a good team, you stick together, you have fun. You take the highs and the lows together. You win and you lose together. And I think I would really encourage people to go for it, because I think there is nothing more rewarding in my experience. But just prepare yourself that it's not the easy path. But if you're happy not to take the easy path, and then, and there are lots of people doing it. There are lots of people in the same boat, and it's great to be able to talk to them about it, because the experience is quite often the same.
Switching on now to some of the functions of the app itself. When I signed up, I went through the process to link it to my Monzo account. I'm trying to, get up on all the latest fintech apps here in the UK. And I saw immediately, as I was scrolling up through Snoop, I got a bunch of suggestions about how to save money, for example, on my SIM, on broadband, which was really helpful for me actually settling here in Bristol. But I was also interested to see that there's a function to engage with users and let them submit some ideas themselves. I'm interested to know how much users have engaged with Snoop via the function to submit ideas. And
yeah, we get a lot, actually. It's interesting, and we use them. I mean, they're super valuable insights, because if you think about what Snoop really tries to do, the way we always talked about it from the outset was we're trying to blend the perfect match of, artificial intelligence and human intelligence. Can we give insights to people? We call them Snoops. Can we give them insights about their money that basically a human will never spot, but an algorithm will, and that an algorithm will never spot, but a human will? And if we can bring those two things together, can we really help them? To give you two examples. So for me, there's an annual subscription that we pay in my family every year. And every time we pay it, I say, why do we pay this? We never use it, but we just paid it. We might as well keep it for the next year. And of course, having Snoop this year, the week before that payment was due, it popped up and said, you're about to make an annual payment of £90 next week. And I was like, finally, there's no way that I could have held in my head that it was due in the first week of July, but it's really easy for an algorithm to spot. So we canceled the subscription. We don't need it. It saved us money. And then, when Netflix put their prices up, in which they did, whatever it was, back in April, you kind of say, well, actually, do I really need 4 screens? Or do I need the top tier where I can watch 4 screens streaming HD simultaneously? I don't need that. So every customer that was paying what was going to be $15.99 for Netflix, we just sent a Snoop to saying, if you're happy with Netflix and you love it, and you love the 4 screens, there's probably not much you can do. But actually, there's a $5.99 tier where it's 1 screen at once. If you don't use the 4, it's easy. Here's how you go and do it. And an algorithm will never spot that, and a human will. And so the bit that where our customers really help us is that second bit, because what we have, if you can imagine, is an editorial team that are always looking for smart ways to save customers money that are based on human insight. And what our customers do is contribute to that. And so, and we've had like all different manner of things actually that we would just never spot ourselves. So, even in the last week, there was an example of a bank that was paying. You had to opt in to get a savings bonus, basically. And so one of their customers said, I think this is a bit sneaky. You have to opt in to get it. Why don't you tell every other customer that's of this savings bank that you can see about it? So we did that. During lockdown, actually, we had, particularly in the first lockdown last year, everyone was kind of disoriented by it and looking for kind of practical advice. And we had a primary school teacher say, I've got some great insights about how to homeschool kids. And so we were like, well, it's a bit different, but we'll give it a try. And actually, it's just it wasn't a smart insight about money so much, just a smart insight about life. And so, but we said, well, but we can spot people with kids because we can look at their payments. So actually we'll deploy that insight and then actually said to customers, do you want more content like this? And, overwhelmingly the answer was yes. So during lockdown, we kept delivering that. So we curate it a lot. We get a lot of input and we use it. I mean, where we can use it, we use it because, and I think that there's definitely an opportunity. I mean, I sort of said this earlier, Snoops at the very beginning of its journey. I mean, we have huge ambitions to really build out the platform, to build out the AI component of it, to help people more effortlessly, not just kind of look backwards with money, but more and more look forwards. And also just, that human element of it, can we increase the kind of sophistication and personalization of that? And ultimately, we'll never be able to come up with all that insight ourselves because it lives in the minds of customers. So there's a massive opportunity to do that. We're at the very beginning of it. There's definitely consumer engagement in it. I think that some consumers just love sharing their knowledge and actually like being the people. There's people when you go to dinner parties. There's always someone who just like has a smart tip or an insight. You go, the bloke you want to bump into at the pub, and we have lots of those. So actually, and they're happy to share and they're happy to help. So, and I think making it more social is definitely a huge opportunity.
Is there any incentive for users to make those contributions?
What we do actually is where customers are happy for us to share their name, and we normally just share their first name, we do. But I think there's opportunities actually to need to build more signals into that so they can see how many likes. You can like a Snoop. You can in the app is you can say, I like this insight, I don't like this insight. And the algorithm basically then serves you more of the stuff you like and less of the stuff you don't. And so I think that actually telling our customers that have submitted Snoops and ideas to save money, how they're, how it was liked and not liked is, it's definitely an opportunity.
Just to dig a little bit into the technical basis, you touched on using AI. Similar to how I initially organized this interview, I just reached out to all the fintechs I could find on Twitter, and we were lucky enough to have Snoop respond. But also, as I was sort of trawling around, the Twitter algorithm threw up a couple of interesting accounts. One was called This Is Bud, and another one was either pronounced plaid or played.
Yeah.
And so you were saying that because of open banking, you're able to have Snoop sitting between the banks and the consumers. But it seems like This Is Bud and Plaid sit between the banks and Snoop. Do you use any of those services?
We do. We use a platform called Openworks, which has just been acquired by Tink, and Tink are another kind of another operator in that space. And if you can imagine what they've done is, every bank's API is different. So what they've built is that sort of connectivity into the bank API, and then what we have is a sort of single API into them. So we absolutely could have built that ourselves, but it's just not efficient to do so. They've already done the plumbing, and actually, what we've seen is that that's become quite quickly a commodity. There are quite a lot of providers that do it actually, and so yes, we work with Openworks, as I say now, Tink, to effectively what they do is they connect into each of the banks, we connect into them. I think the thing that, again, you only learn by experience, the what we do on our side actually is, even after that, that kind of processing and aggregation by Openworks, there's a lot of work we do our side to cleanse the data, to kind of refine the data. If you can imagine, open banking data is such that if I take a business like Tesco, you go, well, actually, what we get is we get an amount, we get a description. Tesco could be Tesco Mobile, it could be Tesco the grocery store. What you find sometimes is the name of the store is in the description, Tesco Bristol, Tesco London. And so you have but actually what the customer wants to see is, how much did I spend at Tesco? They don't care whether it's Tesco, and actually but they don't want to include in that their mobile bill. So there's a huge amount of work you have to do to clean the data. And once you've done that, and only once you've done that, you can build insights from it. And so sort of Bud and Plaid and Tink and TrueLayer and all those guys, they get you so far, but then actually it's not a panacea. You have to build your own solution to really make the data work.
Like any service or product that depends on data, it seems like it's all about that. These days, there's still a lot of cleansing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of
refinement. So there's some hard work. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have something like, I think I'd have to go and ask our CTO, but last time we looked, there's like 3 million merchants. Now there, so all the differences. But then actually the truth is, you need to cleanse those down. There aren't 3 million merchants. There are a lot less than that. And what we've got really good at is that cleansing, and you have to have that to be able to give people the insight.
Sure, and I guess if you fail at that, that's an easy way to turn off the interest of your users.
Yeah.
Continuing the overall theme of our podcast, which is trying to empower users or investors, really, or I guess we're branching more out into personal finance here, at least to make people to refine their skills and to produce a better kind of investor and personal finance manager. And this issue kind of first came up in the final question I asked with Francesca a couple of episodes ago, and this is not to be cynical. I just want to I guess speak frankly about how it comes across from a behavioral perspective. It seems like a lot of these finance or fintech apps they're trying to automate things. They're using AI, etc., to take the effort, if you like, out of some of the decision making and the behavior, especially choosing to do the right thing. And I have a bit of a I don't want to say doubt, but it seems like there's the potential for these kind of apps to lead to a person who's not refining themselves. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and I think that ideally what you need to try and do is do both, because my experience is, and I don't think there's an easy answer to this or an easy solution. And one of the things, having spent 20 years at Virgin talking to customers about money and banking, and sometimes kind of banging your head against a brick wall, and I think that it's often talked about that there's not a kind of an infrastructure that from school talk to you about how to manage money and think about those things. And so you're in a context, you're forced to operate in a context where for lots of consumers that's difficult. And actually, I think that automation and AI and that can make that experience easier for consumers is really important, because anything we can do to get people to engage and benefit is key. And ultimately, if that's all we could achieve, I'd argue that's a better outcome than no progress at all.
At the start of this interview, you said that one of the basic purposes of Snoop was to benefit the customer. So, of course, I trust that you have consumers' best interest at heart.
All I was going to say though was that, and I wasn't even thinking specifically about Snoop there, but But I think that the point you make, I agree with, which is, I think if that's all we could achieve, that would be better than no progress. But I think that, you know, ultimately what you want to achieve is to help consumers kind of build their experience and confidence and knowledge. And you know, if I think about Snoop and what we do, we can't do everything for the customer. We can't sort it all out for them. What we can do is we can give them nudges and insights that are designed to help. And I think, you see, what we are doing is, but ultimately we can't take some of those actions for customers. So when we say, look, we can see, Will, that you're overpaying for your broadband, ultimately Will has to take that action himself to sort it out, right? And so, but I think if we can give you the nudge and give you the confidence that actually you can do it yourself, then you can start to build habits that refine things to customers and give them the skills and confidence to make those changes. And I think you can see that, you know, whether that's in apps that are about helping customers start to save, or so I think that, you know, for me, the point you make is a really good one. I think ultimately what the ambition really should be is it should be about making it easier for customers, because for lots of customers, it is a low engagement category, it is a low interest category. But I think that the best solutions are those that both achieve that and then help build customers' kind of confidence and skills. If you think about, you know, kind of apps that tend to try and help in other areas of life, whether that's nutrition or health, or, you know, ultimately, you know, what those guys are about is they're not just about kind of a quick fix, which is, you know, drink this ready meal for 6 days to lose weight. The best ones are actually trying to change your habits and your behaviors and your knowledge, and actually what good nutrition is, how to eat healthy, how to cook healthily. And, you know, they might make it easier, but they also try and engender that and build that knowledge. And I think that, you know, if fintech can achieve that, if Snoop can achieve that, then we really will have achieved the thing that we set out 20 years ago with Virgin to do. And, you know, I don't know if we'll ever get there, and that's the path we're on. And, you know, because it's a really enjoyable path. We think it's a worthwhile cause. And, you know, the knowledge we've built, we'd love to think that we can try and get a long way there. Does that make sense, Will?
Yeah, I mean, in your answer, because I thought that I was beginning to ask the questions that would begin to conclude the interview, but your answer made me think of a whole bunch of new ones. And I guess one of the things you said made me think, is the finance system for the everyday person just way too complex, such that we need, for heaven's sake, an AI-driven app to help them make sense of it? You know, that was one thing that what you said made me think about. But at the same time, yeah, your intentions and your aims are to make to empower the consumer. Maybe yeah.
I think the finance system is complex. I mean, I think that, and I think there are two elements to that. I mean, Virgin was always aiming for kind of radical simplicity. And I think that, but actually competitive behavior in financial services does not encourage radical simplicity. And actually some of the things that customers are buying are not simple products and will never be a simple product. The mortgage is not a simple product. You're taking on a debt for 25 years, right? So it's a big decision. You need to understand what you're doing. It's not a simple process to buy it. It's not simple, you know. So I think that there will always be, but making the right decisions as a consumer and getting the right can transform your life. It can absolutely be a wonderful thing. So I think that the financial system is necessarily complex, unfortunately, and probably always will be, but the dynamics of it have created a situation for consumers that exacerbates them and makes that complexity more difficult for them. And I think the opportunity for fintech and tech, and life's complicated, right? You know, for everybody, you've got a lot of things to manage and think about. And the opportunity for tech is just, I think, to try and help both simplify that where it's possible and then automate it where it's possible, and help consumers make the best decisions they can as easily as they can. And to go back to your original question, to build the knowledge such they have the confidence to make those decisions. Because the way that consumers are, you know, they're being asked to make complex decisions really with no no context. So that's the opportunity.
So as disciplined investors trained at Stanford, no less, Ben and I have learnt in our framework to ask the question, what are the threats of substitutes and new entrants? So again, in my trawling around Twitter, I found a potential new entrant or substitute for Snoop and the likes, which is Step App. And they're yet to launch, but when they do, basically it'll be a service to help people be the architect of their own habits, and to provide the support for setting up and maintaining new behaviors. So putting yourself 5 years into the future, knowing the potential for these sorts of new entrants, what are your thoughts on what Snoop will be?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that there's always, every sector I've operated in, there's always competition. It's really hard. There are really good businesses out there which kind of force you to work harder, and that's always a good thing. I think when you look forward 5 years for Snoop, my ambition would be that I think that what I see today is lots of businesses and fintechs doing part of the puzzle for consumers. And actually it's like, well, I need one app to do that, one app to do that, that website to do that, that to do that, that to do that. And I think that that's not what consumers want or need. They actually need one thing that really brings that together, whether that's about doing it themselves, or whether that's just about sort of an ecosystem that does that. I don't really know the answer to that. But I think that, someone will build that capability that does that for customers, and it won't be a bank. It will not be, in my view, a Monzo or a Revolut, or and the reason it won't be them is because they have a balance sheet that and a necessity. They've built current account businesses. They are banks now. They have to make the banking business model work. They'll do it brilliantly. They'll deliver a better customer experience, but they can never ever truly be on the customer side because they have their own. They have to leverage a balance sheet to drive a return for their shareholders. And so I think the opportunity is to watch a business that will come and create that for consumers. And I think that, we'd love it to be Snoop. We'll work as hard as we can to make it Snoop. But, someone will do it. And that will be the exciting bit. We'd love it to be us, and we'll, but only time will tell.
Great. How do people find out about Snoop online, whether it's on Twitter or on the web?
Yeah, just head to the App Store or the Play Store and search for Snoop, and we'll pop right up and give us a try. So I'd be fascinated to see what people think. And you can always reach us, just write to hello@snoop.app, and me or one of the team will come back. So we're always thrilled to hear from people. The most gratifying thing genuinely actually is always just people who use the product telling us what they think of it, good and bad. The bad stuff we can improve from, and the good stuff really genuinely get a great review, and it makes your day. So that's what we're in business to do.